Got 26 after, something like that. So I went to my computer and found the slides I want. So I'm going to get through these scale. We're going to jump back to scale for a minute. I apologize for that, and then we'll go back to Emerald Ash Borer treatment options. But scaled insects. Another one that I wanted to show, and I wondered what happened to it, and now I know, is juniper scale. That's another armored scale that can be very detrimental to junipers. So we need to be mindful of that one. Just to show you some damage associated with that, you see up on the top, that's normal foliage. Down on the bottom is juniper scale infested arborvitae. Okay, soft scales. We talked about these a little bit. I mentioned that they don't form a detachable cover, but they produce honeydew. And because they produce honeydew, we get a sooty mold, which is a fungal growth that is commonly associated with that honeydew. Some examples of some common soft scale insects include calico scale, Fletcher scale, which is also known as arborvitae soft scale, Lucanium scale, magnolia scale, that's the big one that we've been contending with of late. Remember, all of these scales, they feed where? Phloem. Okay? Tulip tree scale, cottony maple scale, beech scale, just to name a few. Calico scale, there's just a number of hosts with these, lots of oaks and the like. The trees get thinned, weakened, and then sometimes they die. There's copious amounts of this honeydew that gets formed, and then the bark gets blackened by that sooty mold, and you can see the honeydew just dripping off of these guys. Pretty nasty. But because they produce that honeydew, guess what? Ants love them and tend to them. Here's Fletcher scale, which is a soft scale that gets on the arborvitae. Remember, we cannot detach the covers from these guys. The biology of these guys, they overwinter as nymphs. The adults are found on twigs and stems, and they lay their eggs in late May. So from a phenological perspective, or a biological perspective, we can determine that. The eggs hatch in June, and then those crawlers begin feeding. So if we're going to target this organism, Fletcher scale, we're going to want to target them, all scales for that matter, when they're in the crawler. That's the most vulnerable life stage. So if they hatch in June, that's when we're going to be wanting to go out and look for these guys. Well, how in the heck do you expect to find them? Take a sheet of paper, do a little beat test, and guess what? If they're there, they'll scurry about all over your paper. So then you'll know that's the time to drop the hammer. The beautiful thing is we can use a lot softer products, so insecticidal soaps and the like will do a really nice job of controlling these guys. 1 generation per year. And once again, because the adults and the nymphs have similar mouth parts, they suck the plant juice, and as I told you, they create the honeydew. And when they infest a plant, what we oftentimes see is the chlorosis, and then sometimes we can see premature drop of leaves, but that isn't that common. Then we have Lucanium scale. I got this picture from Dan Potter. This is the University of Kentucky football stadium from about 15 years ago, but nonetheless, you can see the Lucanium scale there. Here's magnolia scale. Look at the sooty mold. And the honeydew that's produced, that's where we get that bacterial growth. Here are the crawlers. That's when they're most, I'm getting a lot of feedback here and I don't know what's going on. Is that better? You see the crawlers here at the magnolia scale? Big pest here in Wisconsin and becoming more and more of a pest. Here's the tulip tree scale and the sooty mold. And that's really, oftentimes, that aesthetic blemish, if you will, is equally as damaging as what we see. Particularly if you happen to have a car parked over the top of this and down below, it is a mess. Here's cottony maple scale. You've seen this one before, I'm sure, particularly on silver maples. Pretty nasty looking organism. And then beech scale. We've seen some incidents of this up along the eastern seaboard of Lake Michigan up near Door County with beech scale. So it's an exotic pest in this particular instance. We first found it back in 2009, so that would have been about, what is that, 9 years ago, 8 years ago. Now, here's what I wanted to talk about, which I was hoping to get to, for management of these various scales, whether we're talking about soft scale or we're talking about armored scale. I want to make a point of emphasis. The most vulnerable life stage is the crawler stage. And we can use insecticidal soaps. So whether it's a soft scale or an armored scale, that's really when we want to be targeting these. So it's imperative that A, we identify which scale species we have, and then B, it's imperative to know the life cycle so that you know when to look for the crawlers. And the way that we look for crawlers is just to take the paper, shake the plant. If there's crawlers there, we know they're out and about. Otherwise, for soft scales, we can control the adults in the summer with systemics. But remember, the neonicotinoids don't work, so I wanted you to be very mindful of that for the soft scales because they're phloem feeders. Over here, for the armored scales, we can control them pretty readily. But we need, oh, I jumped ahead there, my bad. And then the adults in the winter, we can use dormant oils. Do not use dormant oils in the summer. Now, in theory, we could use dormant oils, or we could use dormant oils to control the crawlers, but dormant oils cause phytotoxicity to plants. So if you're going to use an oil, a horticultural oil is the best way to go. In the winter, we use a dormant oil. What's the difference between a dormant oil and a horticultural oil? Anybody know? Viscosity. So the dormant oils are much more viscous and they cause much more phytotoxic effects. So we need to be mindful of that. So what can we do in the winter? Apply a dormant oil after the plant becomes hardened off so that we can mitigate any potential phytotoxicity. But we want to do this before the buds swell in the spring. Several, but not all, soft scales are susceptible to late fall or early spring applications of horticultural oil. So just be mindful of that as well. So closely monitoring, this is what I talked about, doing the shake, or we call it the beat test, and we can look for the most vulnerable life stage depending upon the species. Consequently, we can use insecticidal soaps, horticultural oils, and we can even use synthetic pyrethroids if needed. And we need to really be mindful of the timing of these. So scale insects can be easy to control. You got to know what species you have and when the crawlers are out there. And there are some other types of techniques. We see some trunk microinjections. I don't really recommend those. Really, if you're going to use a systemic for the armor, just do a soil drench. Different products out there that are available. We already talked about Japanese beetle. So I'm going to go back to emerald ash borer. I apologize for whatever happened to my presentation because I don't know. Stump the chump again. So we were at emerald ash borer, were we not? Okay. We were right here, I remember. But we're not in focus though. Now we will be. Guys, oh, that's not good. Technology, you gotta love it. I never fret. There's no need. I do. They had 120 slide carousels, and they had the 80s. The 80s were better because the 120, your slides got stuck because they were too tight. Oh, the bulb would go, yeah. Don't say that. Don't jinx it. Okay, so let's go back to EAV. I know we're circling back, but I wanted to make sure I got through the soft scales and talk about management. Remember, crawlers. Okay, so here's a question. Are insecticides effective? And I get this question all the time, and I love television. I don't like television. I don't like newspaper reporters. If you are, I'm sorry. And I don't like radio because they take everything out of context. So, are insecticides effective? Yes, they can be for protecting trees, but here's the dirty word in my world. I'm an integrated pest management specialist. Eradication, are you kidding me? I can't think of any organism from an insect perspective, maybe one I could come up with that we eradicated. So that's a dirty, dirty word. So if you think we're going to eradicate EAB, you're out of your mind. Okay? So don't expect that. But for tree protection, yes. Really, we're talking about high value specimen trees, heritage trees, legacy trees, boulevard trees, landscape trees. If you've got a wood lot or a forested area, don't think about it. Forget about it. But if you have a tree also that is exhibiting 40, 45, 50% canopy dieback, forget about it. Get the chainsaw out, get rid of it. You're wasting your time. Okay? Common misconceptions. This is where it drives me up a tree, no pun intended. I get this question, these statements, I read it in a newspaper, television, radio, internet, that's the best one. Ash trees can't not be protected or saved. That's hogwash. They can be. Insecticide treatments are not effective. That's hogwash. Insecticide treatments are cost prohibitive. I would say that's somewhat true.